Just because Superman isn't into punching people doesn't mean his vehicles can't. Here's your look at the McFarlane Toys Superpowers Supermobile. Superman's amazing abilities are powered by Earth's yellow sun. However, when exposed to the rays of the red sun, he is significantly weakened and loses his powers over prolonged exposure. In one classic story, Superman is hit by a wave of radiation from a dying red sun, leaving him powerless. To still perform his duties as a superhero, he creates a flying vehicle from the hardest metal in the universe. This vehicle, known as the Supermobile, can withstand any hit, mimic the majority of Superman's powers, and fly him anywhere. Before the fists start to fly, I'd like to thank the folks over at McFarlane Toys that did provide this sample of the Superpowers Supermobile that we could have a look at in this review. I'm going to bring Superman in a moment. If you do bear with me, though, I'm going to grab the tape measure first because I'm going to measure from the end of where the exhaust is to the very front where the Superman emblem is. Technically, you could count the length of the arms as something that would extend outward, but I'm only going to count it to right there as the front of the cockpit area. With that being said, from the end of its thruster exhaust to the very front of the ship, you're looking at the Supermobile being 12 inches exactly, or it's about 30 centimeters long. Some assembly was required when I first took the Supermobile out of its box, but before you start stressing and thinking, oh no, I'm going to have to assemble a model, it's only two parts. Let me show you what has to be assembled. First of all, the cockpit area. This part right here detaches, although right now I'm having a harder time to remove it. Anyways, this cockpit, the dome at least, the canopy, plugs right into the back section here and hinges quite conveniently open with the press of the Superman emblem on front. The other thing that had to be assembled, might be easier for me to remove, the whole back wing here actually had to be installed. There's slots here at the front and neighboring slots here at the back. You just take the pegs, the slots that here are located on the little tabs of plastic, just line everything up and snap it into place. Snapping is not really the best word I want to be using to describe that, but at least it gives you the finished Supermobile when you're all said and done. Now we can go ahead and bring Superman in just to show you what Superman looks like size-wise to the rest of the Supermobile. I have a hard time to believe that this Supermobile would be able to mimic all of his abilities. Maybe the punching abilities, but things like heat vision and stuff, I would have to certainly go back and read the comic to see if that was the case. Now, this original vintage toy, I think at one point I even had the chance to see this at a local garage sale. Never picked it up because I never had a Superpower Superman. In hindsight now, I realize I probably should have picked it up because I would be able to bring in the original one for comparisons. Superman does technically sit inside the canopy. I mean, it would be a deal breaker, I'm sure, if he couldn't. The problem with it, though, is while taking the Superman, which I really have now warmed up to, the problem is his cape. The cape, the material that they've given, is already wrinkle-prone already. And then if you're going to be taking the figure, once again, all you have to do is just press the button here on the front of the emblem, and it opens up the canopy. Inside, by the way, before we actually sit inside Supes, you can see that there's some sticker application. Stickers, luckily, were already applied. I didn't have to do that because I'm not really good always at lining up small stickers like this. But you have a little control console on the one side, a main screen here on the front, and a tiny small sticker applied to the side of the seat as well. Now, Superman, again, you can fold up his legs. That's easy to do. The harder thing to do, though, is to get the cape all kind of folded up in there. It's going to wrinkle no matter what you do. All you can really do is hope that you can tuck enough of it in. Because, again, like the cape is going to cause a little bit of problems. It's going to bunch up. I mean, you really don't need to have Superman sitting too far into the seat. That's more than enough because the canopy is really quite large. You could technically as well remove the cape. So really, if all the fuss and all the muss is bothering you that you're going to get a wrinkled cape, you easily could just detach it. But Superman without a cape seems strange to me, so I'm just going to keep the cape in place and then just complain that there's wrinkles afterwards. Anyways, you just fold this down, and Superman sits inside the cockpit area of the Supermobile. Looks pretty good. Again, just to activate that and open up the canopy once again, you're just only going to press the button here on the back, the big Superman emblem, very obviously telling you you're going to press that and open up the cockpit. I guess for right now, we can actually remove Superman. Oh, look at the wrinkles on the back of his cape. I'm going to have to take a tiny little iron. That's my gesturing for an iron. I'm going to have to iron off the cape and see if hopefully I can get some of the wrinkles out. Other things are actually on this vehicle. There is some sticker application here that was on the back. I didn't have to do that at all. Also, it was here applied on the, and you know what, I'm actually impressed that they lined the stickers up perfectly. I mean, they look like they're completely in line with one another. Maybe this one's a little bit higher up. I could be a stickler for detail. Speaking of details, though, on the back you got the exhaust. There seems to be slots almost as if there's going to emit some sound, but there's no sound inside. Again, no other assembly was really required other than, say, the dorsal fin having to be installed, and then the canopy, which now I'm having a tough time to remove it. It's going to stay in there anyways. And then the other thing that it actually comes included with, before we actually start punching people here, is that the side actually does open up, and you got these tiny little prison cells. Luckily, there's breathing, and at least Superman was smart enough to make the shape of the breathing hole the same shape as his Superman emblem, so no one's going to be suffocating inside. These do open up. They're a little harder to get, though. This one opened up fine. This one here on the other side, I had a little harder time to get opened. Kind of have to have longer fingers for this, longer fingernails, but that does open up, and you got, like I said, 2 compartments on both the sides that you can then take, for all intensive purposes, a superpowers figure. Now, even with Superman, let's go ahead and remove the cape right now. Superman likely would not be imprisoned in his own vehicle. That's a fail-safe you'd like to think he would put in place. But if you were just to take a regular Superman figure or any superpowers figure of this build and try your best to fit it inside the prison cell, well, you'll notice right away you can't close the door. I don't know if the intended plan is to actually have the door closed. If the plan is to have the door always open, I feel it defeats the purpose of it being actually a prison. But the chamber inside, on either side, is actually too small to fit and close successfully. You're only just going to be convincing yourself that you can actually close the door. You can't close it all the way. That's okay. I suppose, if anything, I probably could use the side compartments for storing accessories. I don't know what other things I would store for Superman. Maybe his lunch on one side, a change of clothes or packed of clothes on the other side. But again, you just like close these down. And you want to make sure as well that you snap them in place. That's going to keep the doors closed. And again, for all intents and purposes, it would also keep the bad guys inside as well. The last feature I certainly did want to show you guys is on the bottom section here. You've got a turned little dial. It actually looks like the top of a bottle. You can see that there's like serrated, not serrated, serrated is not really the word I want to be using, but you can see like there's like little ledged points all the way around it. Makes for a good, easy grip, easy to hold on to. Now the gimmick, obviously, one last thing I actually did want to tell you too, this little cap lines nicely also with the fin that's on the bottom of it. So the vehicle, for all intents and purposes, actually does stay pretty flat. I thought for a second, until I actually looked at the vehicle, that this would stick further out, and I figured if anything, the vehicle would be lopsided. There's no way it would stand on its own without essentially a kickstand. But the way they've actually lined everything up, it's the exact same length. So it actually balances rather nicely. Okay, I know you guys all want to see how this thing punches. So all you literally have to do is just turn the knob. You don't have to turn it one specific way. In fact, you can actually turn it either way. When you turn the knob, what it does is essentially it extends the fist on the one side, and it also retracts the fist on the other side. And then what you then do is when you rotate it the other way, it's basically repeating the steps with the other hand. The hands themselves actually are nicely detailed, although to be fair, unfortunately they're a little hollow on the underside, but that's not really the show side anyways, like Julia Child would describe. Julia Child would always say the show side is the part that you're going to be showing the people. The part you're showing the people is really the front and the top of it. Even if it's hollow, it's not going to be a part you're going to be seeing anyways. The fists themselves are nicely done. You can see they've sculpted each of the individual fingers and the neighboring thumb. And again, when you just rotate it, don't worry, I'm not actually going to punch you. I'm just going to pretend like I'm punching you. Simply just rotate it back and forth, and the fists extend and retract on either side, the opposite side than what the one is doing. So that's a fun little gimmick. And again, like when it comes to displaying Superman, you can either go with or without the cape. I mean, I suppose the cape being on him is going to run the risk of getting wrinkles. I mean, the cape is already wrinkly. Might be even better suited just to have Superman sitting inside the cockpit without the cape. But then what are you really going to be doing with a cape? Oh, right, yeah. You technically could even open up the compartment. Who says it has to be for criminals? Simply just open up the side, take Superman's cape, which really isn't serving a purpose right now, and Superman could keep it somewhat unwrinkled and just fold it up for later on. It's, again, a nice-looking vehicle. It's a little more ridiculous. It's sort of along the same veins as Flash having a motorcycle. Does Flash ever really need to have a motorcycle where he can run faster than the vehicles he's sitting on top of? The same thing also sort of applies for Superman. It's kind of a ridiculous concept that Superman, I guess he would lose his abilities, but the fact that he would actually be inside of a vehicle that's somewhat already inferior to what he's actually capable of being seems a little over the top, seems a little ridiculous. But I do actually like the idea that this is based on the original vehicle that was released back in the day. Of course, now we get a brand new version thanks to the folks over at McFarlane Toys. One thing I did want to tack on here in Final Looks, if there was any confusion at all, this one is actually based more on the comics. The Supermobile debuted in Action Comics 481, dated as far back as 1978. So it actually came out a couple of months before I was born. I'm dating myself by saying this. Corgi at one point in 1979 also released a Supermobile, slightly varied than the one that we're getting here. It had red fistons instead of silver. Instead of the red canopy, it was clear instead. But it's the one that most closely resembles the one that we're getting here from McFarlane Toys. Rather, the one from Kenner didn't resemble this at all. In fact, it was a slightly smaller, almost escape pod that had a little capture area on the front of it, not punching fists. Even though we are getting this one that actually better resembles the original comic version of Supermobile, I do hope that at some point we do get ourselves another Supermobile, very slim to none chance that that's going to actually happen, that looks more mimicking the original Kenner one that we got, not the one that was released by Corgi in 1979. Still very vividly, I remember seeing this Supermobile at a garage sale. A kid was actually selling random things. I thought my collection was random. His collection seemed even more random. He had like a Supermobile, I think he had Darkseid's vehicle, and he had a couple of things from Marvel. I didn't actually pick up the Supermobile, and my logic at the time was, even though it was 75 cents, I still remember it was 75 cents, didn't pick it up because in my mind, I didn't have a superpowered Superman, so why would I pick up a vehicle if I didn't have the figure that sat inside? Hindsight now, I realized I should have probably still picked it up at 75 cents. He even had the box and everything for it. I made dumb decisions, certainly, as a kid. But what do you guys think of Supermobile here? Let me know down below in the comments section. And did you either originally own the 1979 Corgi Supermobile that was based more closer to the comics? Or did you have the one from Kenner, was a slightly smaller design? Let me know down below in the comments section. And as well, I'd like to thank the folks over at McFarlane Toys that did provide the sample of the Supermobile from their new expanded Superpowers toy line. As always, guys, if you enjoyed this video, want to hit with a like. If you're loving the content you guys are seeing and do certainly want to stick around for more, then make sure you hit the subscribe button down below and turn the bell notification on. And as always, guys, thanks for watching. See you guys next time.